So as Rhonda said, I'm going to read from Gulf. This is a book that in a lot of ways just really explores what the meaning of home is in a very transient society, and for people like me who've moved around a lot. This is called Dirty Secrets. What if home is just the taste of dirt in the woods behind the house on Claremont Drive? Best at the V where a tree's trunk diverged into roots that submerged in that powdery earth. A raw potato taste, metallic undercurrents like the blood of a loose tooth, a smell like the first seconds of rain, of earthworms off-gassing their relief. Home, elemental and fading as taste buds. I licked that soil from my fingers for years more than anyone suspected. Stopped when we moved to where the mud was coarse and vulgar. Grown, I had a lover with a sandstone carving. Wet, it hinted of potatoes and earthworms, but eventually he caught me, my tongue seeking asylum along the rounded edge. I didn't get to stay there either. Gulf is my first collection of poetry, and it's really a book about searching for belonging, I think, more than anything. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, and now find myself living in St. John's, Newfoundland. And it's a town, or it's a place where people know when you belong there, and I most certainly am known as not from there. This is a poem about the very blessing of knowing the language in a place and knowing how it's spoken. It's called Native Tongue. Oh, and if you don't know, the lady slipper is a small orchid that grows wild in eastern Canada. Native Tongue. The lady slipper does not apologize for her asymmetry, her awkward stature, her complicated moniker. She flashes her colors, sticks out her full fat lip, and wags her rude tongue with impunity in her native wind. So as I said, I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I immigrated to Canada as a young adult when I was 18. And for a number of years, I lived in very rural Manitoba, which was a far cry from the suburbs of Pittsburgh, and was also a place where I didn't belong, and I was frequently, that was frequently pointed out to me. A few years ago, I read some journals. I took a wonderful course on Canadian exploration literature and the early journals of the settlers here, and I read the journals of Letitia Hargrave, who was born to a wealthy Scottish family and married a Hudson's Bay trader. In 1840, she moved to Manitoba with him, or to York Factory in what would become Manitoba. This poem is called Letitia's Cold Footsteps. Letitia and I arrived in this plain country, daughters of someone high somewhere else. Our credentials crammed into oversized luggage and rounded vowels. Bold outfits and outright attitudes, as if entitlement and piano lessons would serve as currency here. Letitia and I arrived unprepared for such a fierce onslaught of cold. Heads full of Dickens, we froze our soft-soled feet in style, took note of the paucity of suitable confidants, longed for our mothers. Once our senses recovered, we shivered to unfamiliar thrills, the exotic grammar of boys pulled from school to pull the plow, those unkempt Clouston girls, calloused hands that could bale up hay, handle a stick shift, keep the boys loyal only to them. When righteous alienation failed to fix our fast-beating hearts, we tipped up our eyes, hundreds of miles and 140 years apart, believing no one else had ever looked up to see that gargantuan sky but God, the universe, Letitia, and me. We sought solace or something else to claim us, found only a fear of clouds, those blind agents of change. This is a poem for people who fly around a lot, as I have in the past. Rhonda, this is a poem for you, actually. People who spend a lot of time in airports. It's called Ricochet. Dropping down into this stopover city early evening, I watch a nameless river, the rush of cars pulsing on thoroughfares, the red-lit, fluid motion of arteries. Hours later, my nowhere fast footsteps ricochet through this bright white terminal, pulse past shuttered restaurants, and settle into my late gate. I haven't spoken a word out loud since landing. Lingering wears me down, and waiting for the next connection, trying to stave off hunger until I get home, I picture what might be there, waiting. Leftovers vivid with diced tomatoes and dill, thick crusted bread that somehow kept itself fresh. And then I realize I'm standing in the wrong kitchen, the wrong house, the last house, or the house before that. I have to walk myself outside, all the way back to the airport, say my address aloud, and imagine the taxi arriving at my door. So to get to Newfoundland, I loaded everything that I could fit, way too much, in a U-Haul in Winnipeg, and I strapped it to my car, and I drove from Winnipeg to the ferry and then on to St. John's. I don't recommend this to anyone. Don't do this. This is a really big country. This poem is called Heavy Load. She's getting a lot of mileage out of that U-Haul story, pulls it out at parties whenever anyone asks, "How did you end up here?" He knows it by heart. Incessant rain, uphill battles, an almost burst tonsil, and then the chains starting to drag from too much weight. Here, her audience looks to him for confirmation. He nods, sometimes points out the distance between there and here gets longer every time she tells it. The things she left beside the Trans-Canada. 3 ceramic pots in a parking lot outside Mattawa, a box full of books and a vinyl attaché full of magazines in a gas station. And somewhere later, her brown velvet skirt, although he can't imagine that was too heavy. She likes to act out, leaving the punch bowl roadside to lighten the load. Cut glass, she says, very heavy. Though now she's edited out that bit about her mother bringing it so many miles to pass it on. The punch bowl, her arms round to embrace its shadow, a bend at the knees, pantomime ballet, roadside. My piano overboard on the way to the new world. He knows this scene, at least, is a lie, remembers her call from a phone booth on the edge of the Trans-Canada, trucks thundering past as she described how she'd left the heavy heirloom in the Paradise Motel, a scribbled note among the cups. Perhaps you need a punch bowl. When I was planning what to read tonight, I thought, oh, geez, it's Valentine's Day. I should pull out a love poem. I must have a love poem. Not so much. I thought, it's Russell's come all this way to be here with me. It's our first Valentine's Day as a married couple, and I should, So this is the only thing I had that was even close to a love poem. It's called wary. I like to lay the feelings out on the table. After all, I have enough place settings for everyone, plus the complete serving set, and I've learned it's best to keep the angst and the anger at the ready. No point locking those devils up in a box. Someone always drops by with a crowbar. Even Pandora knows that. All this polishing is a chore, of course, but I like the tines shined up and pointed straight, blades facing the way they should. You have to keep an eye on those emotions, you know. Otherwise, they might sneak up behind while you're doing the supper dishes, stick you in the throat. So, that's my love poem. Maybe stick to the belonging stuff. In Newfoundland, when you're not from there, you're a come from away, or a CFA. And you know, don't get me wrong, I mean, they're warm and they're friendly, but you're still a CFA. This poem is called The Sum of Come From Aways. Consider the coyote, the common dandelion, the petroleum geologist, the mink. Consider also the proliferation of socio-cultural development committees and the scarcity of native-born sons inclined to sit on these boards. Ponder the lupin, sprung hillside, roots refurbishing unwanted ground. Count the number of times a passing whale appears on a tourism brochure. Divide by the shelf life of an iceberg. To sum up, factor in the probability of collision between vehicle and moose, recent transplants vying for the right-of-way. The last one I'm going to read is called Canadian Geographic. It's a bit of a visual thing, so you have to sort of imagine the country. Canadian Geographic. I don't have the composition you hold dear here, no rising brow or salt-stung eyes, no narrow, berry-stained mouth to curl snug around the names of your coves and bays. I'm a girl come from the latter half of the country, from west of that precipitous drop, down beyond the hollowed bowl, the bare and bony ridges, those soft, round hills. No, not from as far as that money pot, the buried treasure, the lead-in to a dramatic rise, knees bent sharp toward the sky, before the final falling curve of sole to ball to toes dipped in warmer seas. I'm just from that soft, flat middle part, the place where you lay your head and wait for the storm to subside. Thank you.